Our message around the world from all the people is clear, and it is unique: to stop Hazara genocide in Afghanistan. To stop Hazara genocide in Afghanistan.
Hazara genocide Afghanistan.
Stop Hazara genocide in Afghanistan.
Stop Hazara genocide in Afghanistan.
Recognize Hazara genocide.
Recognize Hazara genocide.
The Hazaras survived extreme period of persecution during the state formation attempt led by Abdul Rahman, Amir of Afghanistan in 19th century. In fact, Abdul Rahman considered the Shia communities to be improper Muslim. The Hazaras were particularly persecuted due to the new degree of religious heresy because of their Shia affiliation. As a result, many Hazara killed, left their land, and migrated to other countries. During the past 2 decades, and after the United States intervention to Afghanistan, the Hazara communities have used education to transform their status and empower themselves in Afghanistan. For this reason, our ethnic group boasted one of the most well-educated community in Afghanistan and around the world. We support and advocate for human rights, self-governance, free election, religious freedom, and the rule of law in Afghanistan and around the world. Our loyalty to peace and enthusiasm to education branded us. And again, I want to emphasize and mention that our loyalty to peace and enthusiasm for education branded us. However, this is not the first and the last. There have been horrible incidents against our ethnicity in Afghanistan. In 2015, when I was in Afghanistan, gunmen kidnapped 14 Hazaras passengers from Abbas and beheaded them indiscriminately, which led the Tabassum movement. Wedding ceremonies, maternity wars, and demonstration Hazaras continue to be targeted by suicide bombers, including the later Hazara-led protest movement called Roshnai or Light, which was protesting President Ashraf Ghani government's alleged avoidance of imported electricity transmission line going through Hazara populated central Afghanistan. Since the Taliban took control of the country in Afghanistan, we are already witnessing an increase in attacks on the Hazara community. Since the targeted suicidal attack in Koch Educational Center, the hashtag to stop Hazara genocide going viral with over 11 or more than million mentions on Twitter. And this number is only growing. People around the world, regardless of their ethnic and religious sect, members of international communities, politicians, human rights activists, have all joined online protest movement and standing in solidarity with the Hazara people in Afghanistan. Therefore, we are here to raise our voices and ask the United Nations, and particularly the United States, to help us to stop Hazara genocide in Afghanistan. Stop Hazara genocide. Hazara ethnicity was one of the main supporters during the mission in Afghanistan. During the mission in Afghanistan for 20 years, we supported all our allies in Afghanistan. We request from Nebraska Government Office, Secretary of State who is present here, thank you so much for joining us, congressmen, senators, to help our community for this targeted killing and genocide which is going on in Afghanistan. If we cannot stop it today in Afghanistan, soon or later will affect on us here. And I want to mention this one again, that if we cannot stop the issues that going on right now in Afghanistan, sooner or later, it will affect on us here. I just want to highlight and say thank you for all those brave men and women in Afghanistan Army veterans that serve in Afghanistan. My deepest condolence to the families that they lost their loved one in Afghanistan. From all those 2,456 Americans that we lost in Afghanistan, none of them has been killed in the area and territory which is belong to the Hazara ethnicity. And I want to mention this one again, that from all those 2,456 Americans that we lost in Afghanistan, none of them has been killed in the area and territory which is belong to the Hazara ethnicity. I want to point and mention that we as an American never and ever left our allies behind and alone. And I want to point and mention this one again, that we as an American never and ever leave our allies alone and behind. At the end, I want to conclude my speech with a poem from Sadi Shirazi, which says, human beings are member of a whole. Integration, one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. Thank you so much, and thanks for attending.
Stop Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide! Recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
I want to call on United Nations that recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Thank you so much, guys. Now I want to invite Mr. Nebraska Secretary of State, Bob Evnen, to present his speech. Thank you so much. Thanks, Bob.
Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide!
Good afternoon, all. My name is Bob Evnen. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Secretary of State of the state of Nebraska. The 20-year military engagement of the United States in Afghanistan was a fight against a terrorist government bent on the destruction of the United States and the West. Putting their own lives at risk every day, scores of thousands of Afghans aligned themselves with the U.S. military and the U.S. State Department in the hope that they could help build a better country for themselves and for their children. No group of Afghans were more distinguished in this effort than the Hazara community. We accepted, indeed we sought, the allegiance of the Hazara community in support of our cause, and you responded with all your hearts and souls. The Hazaras who worked in common cause with us put their lives in danger and the lives of their families. No less than the founders of the United States of America themselves put their lives at risk at their own time of great danger in the pursuit of the cause of freedom. Since our abrupt departure from Afghanistan just over 1 year ago, the Taliban, now free of constraint, are pursuing a path of brutality against the Hazaras, our Afghan allies. A British parliamentary inquiry focusing on the situation of Afghan Hazaras issued a report on September 2nd this year. The parliamentarians wrote this in their report: When the Taliban took control of Afghanistan in 2021, it significantly affected the situation faced by the Hazaras and reversed the 20-year progress made in addressing the marginalization and discrimination experienced by this minority group. The return to power of the Taliban has included brutal acts of violence against the Hazara throughout Afghanistan and a return of terror. The first half of 2022 has seen hundreds of members of the Hazara community killed and many more injured as a result of the targeted attacks, including bombings of Hazara schools, places of worship, and other centers. This trend is likely to continue. There is a pressing need to provide the community with protection in line with international obligations under the Genocide Convention. As predicted by the report, this trend has continued. As we heard from Mr. Nazari days ago, a suicide bomber murdered scores of Hazara school children, mostly girls, at their school. My friends, ours is a moral obligation, a sacred duty to stand by our Afghan allies, the Hazaras. We must stand with our Hazara Afghan allies before Congress, before the administration, and before the United Nations to demand that the world intervene to stop the genocide of the Hazara community. The Hazaras who have settled in Nebraska have proved to be hardworking, diligent, responsible members of our communities. Hazaras prize education and they love their children. They remain our allies here just as they were in Afghanistan. And so we stand with the Hazara community today, shoulder to shoulder, as they stood with us. This is our moral obligation. This is our sacred duty. Let us resolve to honor that duty. Stop Hazara genocide.
Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Recognize Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Stop Hazara genocide!
Thank you so much, Bob, Nebraska Secretary of State.
آره من هزاره‌ام گلوام در زابل بریده شد دستانم در زخم زنگ با من خداحافظی کرد قرآنم در الزهرا آتش کشیده شد جغرافیام در سید الشهدا خاکستر شد قلمم در موعود شکست پاهایم را در کلب قهرمانان جا گذاشتم آره من هزاره‌ام هزار تکه‌ام و هر تکم در گوشه این سرزمین دفن شد من هزاره‌ام در این قسمت از خواهرم صغرا خواهشمندم تا آمده و شعر را که در مورد مرکز آموزشی کوچ در نظر گرفته به شما عزیزان در اشتراک بگذارم بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم و بعین استعین و هو الخیر المعین حمد و ثنا و ستایش خدایی را که از خاک چنین انسان‌های زیبایی آفرید و درود و صلوات بر ناجی بشریت عضو انسانیت و کوهی از استقامت و فخر دو عالم محمدین صلی علی محمد و آل محمد از دست دادن عزیزانمان را و نونهالانمان را برای شما عزیزانی که در اینجا برای غم شریکی و تندارانمان تشریف آورده اید تسلیت عرض می دارم. از دست دادن عزیزانمان و نونهالانمان یک ضایعه جبران ناپذیر برای جامعه ماست. از خداوند یکتا برای بازماندگان شهدای دارایی صبر جمیل خواهانم. کوتاه شعر را که در وصف قوم هزاره تهیه نموده‌ام را می‌خواهم امروز برایتان به خوانش بگیرم. مرفتم دشت برچی از تو باشه، مرفتم دشت برچی از تو باشه، پل خشک تا به اونچی از تو باشه، پل خشک تا به اونچی از تو باشه. مرفتم سوی قبرستان و زادگاه، مرفتم سوی قبرستان و زادگاه، به کابل هرچه داشتم از تو باشه، به کابل هرچه داشتم از تو باشه. دیگر کابل برایم دیدنی نیست، دیگر کابل برایم دیدنی نیست، فضایی امن و جایی دیدنی نیست، فضایی امن و جایی دیدنی نیست. دیگر آن کرسی موعود کاج کوثر، دیگر آن کرسی موعود کاج کوثر برای من مکانی تحصیلی نیست، برای من مکانی تحصیلی نیست. دیگر این شهر برایم لالگون نیست، دیگر این شهر برایم لالگون نیست، خبرها سرخطش جز مرگ و خون نیست، خبرها سرخطش جز مرگ و خون نیست. که بعد از هر صدای انفجاری، که بعد از هر صدای انفجاری به جز انا الیه راجعون نیست، به جز انا الیه راجعون نیست.
نعره تکبیر،
الله اکبر،
نعره تکبیر،
الله اکبر،
مرگ به طالب، مرگ به طالب، مرگ به هزاره کش، مرگ به انسان کش.
روح تمام شهدای دانایی قرین رحمت الهی و برای بازماندگانشان صبر و جمیل خواهانم.
آمین.
تشکر از همه‌تان.
آمین. Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide! Recognize Hazara genocide! Recognize Hazara genocide!
تشکر از خواهر من سغرا. یک عمر اگر سیاهی شب را گریستم، تاریخ شاهد است که آزاده زیستم. فریاد کرده ایم و پیدار رفته ایم، ما نسل درد دیده آزادگیستیم. از آقای علی رحیمی خواهشمندم تا تشریف آورده و در مورد نسل کشی هزاره ها در افغانستان با شما صحبت نماید.
Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide!
دوستان، برادران، خواهران، مهمانان گرامی و شرکت کنندگان، السلام علیکم و رحمت الله و برکاته. Dear friends, brothers, sisters, distinguished guests and participants, good afternoon. First of all, I offer prayers for all victims of Hazara genocide, in particular the girls and boys who lost their lives in the recent attacks in Kach Educational Center. And I also wish a speedy recovery to those girls and boys who injured in this
horrific attack. The tragedy has left a deep wound in our hearts. That's why we are here. It reminds me of Sadi's poem that Nazari recited in English. I'd like to recite it in Dari. بنی آدم اعضای یکدیگرند که در آفرینش یک گوهرند چه عضوی به درد آورد روزگار دیگر عضوها را نماند قرار تو که از محنتی دیگران بیغمی نشاید که نامند مهد عالمی. I'm glad we are here to express our sympathy to the families of the victims of genocide in Afghanistan. We pray to God Almighty to give them the strength to bear this severe pain. Actually, today we are here to be the voice of Hazara people and to share Hazara's pain and suffering with the people of the world and call for sympathy and justice. We are here today to urge the United Nations to break its silence and recognize the Hazara genocide in Afghanistan, because further silence will cause more death, will cause more killing. Today we are here to call on the United Nations and ICC, International Criminal Court, to intervene as soon as possible and stop Hazara genocide in Afghanistan. Today we are here to urge human rights institutions to stand with us and uphold human rights in Afghanistan. Hazara genocide in Afghanistan started during notorious Amir Abdurrahman in late 19th century. 62% of Hazara people were killed, their houses and their lands were confiscated and distributed among other tribes and military officers. Their women and girls were sold as slaves. Many of them were forced to exile. Those who remained in the country were deprived of their basic human rights as a citizen. They faced various forms of discrimination as well as ongoing persecution. Unfortunately, the Taliban resumed genocide against the Hazara people when they first came to power in 1996. They killed 2,000 Hazara men and women in 3 days in Mazar-e-Sharif and declared Tajik should go to Tajikistan, Uzbek should go to Uzbekistan, and Hazara should go to Goristan. You mean Goristan in Dari in Pashto means graveyard or cemetery. I refer to this because there is a criminal intention that says genocide. That is the acts of genocide, elimination, and ethnic cleansing. Hazara should go to Goristan, to a graveyard. There is no place for Hazara in Afghanistan. It means that Taliban started killing, kidnapping, and threatening Hazara people everywhere. On highways, Hazara passengers were taken off the buses and killed. Tabassum, a 9-year-old girl with 6 other Hazara passengers, is an example of such atrocities, in which she was beheaded with a metal wire. This left a deep wound in our heart. And Hazara will never forget this kind of atrocities with the Hazara that happened with Hazara generations. Hazara have been killed in mosques, sports clubs, coal mines, schools, education centers, wedding ceremonies, maternity hospitals, libraries, voting centers, ID card distribution centers, public buses, and peaceful demonstration, enlightening demonstration in Demazan, in which about more than 100 young and educated Hazaras were killed and injured. Being faced with all these heinous atrocities and acts of genocide committed by Taliban and so-called ISIS group, Hazara people have always raised their voice through protests, peaceful protests and demonstration and media outlets, calling on the world community and the United Nations for justice. But the United Nations, unfortunately, has always kept silent. While based on the Human Rights Convention and the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crimes of Genocide, United Nations is responsible. United Nations has the duty to intervene, to investigate, and to stop Hazara genocide in Afghanistan. Each crime, such as crime against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of genocide, has its own definition. Many people say there are many people killed during wars in Afghanistan. So how you are claiming that Hazara are killed in Afghanistan? I say, okay, that is right, but there is different kind of crimes: crime of war, crime of genocide, and crime against humanity. So they are their own definition. War crimes and crimes against humanity occur when parties to the conflict violate IHL, International Humanitarian Law. When they violate international humanitarian law, that is war crime against humanity. But what is crime? What is crime of genocide? Genocide occurs when a specific group of people is targeted solely for their race, nationality, and religion, and the perpetrator intends to destroy in whole or in part that national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So, by investigating of the crimes committed, type of crimes that are perpetrated, types of victims targeted, and the place of crime chosen by the perpetrators, it can be revealed, it can be proved that the criminal action is present and criminal intention is also present. So these two important elements of crime can prove that genocide is being committed in Afghanistan, but United Nations is silent. On the other hand, it is crystal clear that the Hazara people are being targeted because of their ethnic and religious affiliation. And they are killed in both war and peacetime. They are killed with an intention to destroy, eliminate, and ethnic cleansing, which are acts of genocide. There is no other justification for such crimes. It is acts of genocide, no other justification. How can you justify Hazara's newborn babies and pregnant women being intentionally killed in maternity hospitals? It means elimination of generation. It means prevention of births, which is acts of genocide. United Nations is silent. How can you justify Hazara's girls and boys being killed in education centers and in schools, sports clubs. How can you justify Hazaras men and women being killed in wedding ceremonies and different other ceremonies in the mosques and sport clubs, coal mine, buses, and other public places? How can you justify that? How can the Taliban justify their crimes against Hazara people based on the Islamic Sharia? While in Islam, killing one innocent person is equal as killing all people, and the perpetrator's punishment is eternal hell. According to chapter 5, verse 32, and chapter 4, verse 93 of Holy Quran. Therefore, we ask for justice and urge the United Nations and the ICC, International Criminal Court, to investigate the crimes and recognize these crimes against Hazara as genocide and take appropriate action in accordance with the relevant conventions. So far, Hazara people have tried a variety of ways, like peaceful protests and media outlets, to raise their voice against acts of genocide in Afghanistan and share their pain and suffering with the international